I'm Allison Scobard. I'm with Consolidated Planning Group and the leader of the ADDA SR group out of Sugar Land of Fort Bend County. We're excited that you've joined us tonight for this awesome topic. The ADDA support group is a support group that supports individuals impacted by ADHD and other related conditions. Oftentimes we see spectrum disorder as well. And so we started this group in Fort Bend County. I don't know. I should look at this probably 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe we're at 4 years ago now. And typically, what we do is we meet at Sugarland Baptist Church off of Sweetwater the last Tuesday of every month. And then that was pre-COVID. And so our meetings have grown because at first it was a parent support group meeting. And each month we have a speaker that brings real tools and resources to us that we can implement in our lives with our kids with ADHD. And so because of COVID, we've moved to an online format, and we don't really have any end in sight of when we're going to get back together. But when we do get back together, we also have support groups that run at the same time as the parent support group for your children. So we have an elementary age group that meets, and we also have a junior high school group that meets that have moderators that are either directors of a special needs school, psychologists, those types of leaders. And then they also have speakers that come and give them some tools and resources that they can implement in their daily lives. So tonight, I'm excited to say that we have Jeremy Angus with us. And Jeremy's going to be our speaker tonight. He's a licensed specialist in school psychology. He is a disability advocate. He himself is legally blind, so he's been there, done that in the side of disabilities. And he does a lot of work in both the autism community as well as ADHD. And the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight is what that kid needs is a good, and we always think talking to, but it's listening to. So I myself am very, very excited to have you here with us tonight. And I'm going to just turn it right on over to you, Jeremy.
All right, great. Let me do my cool screen share magic. And let's see. All right. Share screen. All right.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to just mention one more thing. I'm going to monitor the chat box for you tonight. So as Jeremy is talking tonight, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And Jeremy, would you prefer those questions as we're going through the presentation, or would you like to have the questions at the end? What's best for you?
Well, what I can do is do a kind of a natural pause whenever I hit a point. And I love that concept because I can't read the chat most of the time. So that works out really good for me. So that, hey, but yeah, that sounds perfect. What I'll do is I'll stop at certain sections and ask if there were any questions. If they're not, I'll keep moving.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thanks for being here.
No problem. Well, this is great. Thank you guys all for coming. I got to get this presentation a little while. I've given it a handful of times. It's a really important topic to me. Working in the school system taught me that sometimes we have really good evidence-based information that gets written off as being I can't think of the term, but I guess too huggy feely. You guys hear that. If anybody works in education, you know what I mean. So when I tell a parent, maybe you should listen to them, to them, that sounds like, okay, so you're going to let them win. It's not what this is about. This is all evidence-based. This is all structural stuff. I'm not over the top. Like I go by evidence-based and I go by what really works. I've seen this work. I've worked with some pretty severe cases. I worked for a district in their residential kind of treatment facility with children that were so severe they couldn't be in the regular population. And I had a lot of success diffusing some extreme behaviors and some violent tendencies. I myself, and I'm not speaking against it because I understand certain situations call for certain actions, but I myself have never restrained a child. And I am trained to do it, but I've never had to because I employ a lot of these measurements. So please, as we're moving forward, realize if you get that kind of like, that sounds a little bit too hippie-ish or too letting the kid win, this is all stuff that I've seen work with some of the most extreme cases in my career. So Again, like I said, the idea is that the idea I came up with is I love to use acronyms. Analogies. Analogies are really good teaching tools, mainly because if I have to come to you and goes, hey guys, we're going to learn about the corpus callosum and how the two sides of the hemisphere, your brain's like, oh man, I got to make up new words and terminology. With a good analogy, you've already got the pathways built in your brain, and we're going to walk through those pathways together and you'll make new connections. It's a little easier to retain the information. So here we go. I like to start out most of my presentations with historical information. I like this one. It's just a good, solid quote. All speech and written language is a dead language until it finds a willing, prepared hearer. That's what I'm talking about. What you say does not matter if the other person's not listening. And we assume that if they hear the words that they're listening, but that's not really what's happening. There's a lot more involved in it, and we'll go through those as well. So I usually don't go through this whole thing. I just want you to see this is what happens when you talk. Right now, when I say, hi, my name is Jeremy, all of this happens. And then you say, hi, my name is James. It all happens again. Oh, hi, what do you do for a living? It happens every single time words are exchanged. All of these processes kick into place. We're not here to learn about these processes. You're not going to walk away from this a neurological expert, because that's not a good use of your time. But I want you to see all of this. Every bit of this is what's taken when one person speaks and another person hears. So what we're going to do, and here's a nice little visual of it. Look at all this stuff. There's just so many little intricate details. There's so much involved in just words, because what are words, right? We don't think about that. We think, well, words are what we use to talk with. Yeah, well, that's the little part of it, but it's what we've all agreed to talk with, right? I think last time I checked, Houston has somewhere around 87 languages that are regularly spoken. That's not all the languages that exist in Houston, just the regular ones. So that should give us a pretty good idea that language can come from anywhere, and it's what we agree to, right? Like, this is a water bottle. For us that speak English, this is a water bottle. For anyone else from any other country, they have a different word. So moving forward with that, let's start a conversation. So what's the very first part is the source, okay? This is the one who has the package. And this is how we're going to make the analogies. Everybody here, I'm pretty certain, has ordered something from online. I want you to start thinking about communication as if you're sending a package to somebody else. And so what we're doing is we have an idea. Do I want to send a cake? Do I want to send a letter? Do I want to send a card? All of those are different types of packaging that take different types of preparation. But it's your idea, right? It all starts like this, like, oh, I need to tell my husband that he needs to take the trash out. Something that simple. That's the idea. You need to get that idea across. So communication is needed in order to make sure they get the idea that you have. So then our second step is going to be encoding. This is the packaging part. So again, we have to consider multiple aspects of this. What is it I want to say? How do I want to say it? Is the person going to accept it? Do I text them? Do I send them an email? Do I leave them a Facebook comment? You know, some people will argue that breaking up with somebody through text is easier. Is it right? No, probably not, especially for the person on the other end. It's hurtful. It feels disconnected. So encoding is a really big, just as important as packaging. If you're sending glass and you just send it straight, it's not going to make it. You have to consider, well, it's glass. It could shift. So I need to make sure I have the right kind of packaging, and I need to make sure they put fragile on it so that it's not getting tossed around in the back of a truck. So just like the messages we want to convey to other people, we need to consider what are we sending and how are we going to send it. And this is the how we're going to send it. This is our channel. So we got the package ready to go, right? We got our message like, ooh, I want you to, I need you to clean your room. All right, I've got it. The idea I have is clean your room. Okay, well, he's 16 and he forgets. And if I just go in and say, you need to clean your room, we're going to have a fight. So let's think about this. Maybe I should leave a note. Right now, you're trying to figure out, I got the package, I got the idea, I got my package ready. How do I get it to him? Do I overnight it? Do I ship it? Do I deliver it myself? And like I said, this is all analogy based, but it kind of makes sense when you're thinking about communication. What's the best way to get that person to respond to the words I'm giving them without misinterpretation, right? So then that's when we get to this idea. So all those parts, the idea or the source, the encoding, and the transmission method, those are the very first step. That's my job. My job as the sender, which I am right now, you guys are the listeners, I have to package my thoughts. I'm sitting here rummaging through years and years of research, deciding, who's listening to this? Is this really the time to talk about heavy neurological information or to bring up research studies from 1984? Or are these people really just here to hear a good conversation and walk away thinking, okay, maybe I understand people a little bit better? I've chosen to make it a little simpler, mainly because it's a Tuesday afternoon. It's 6:30. You guys probably just got home. I have to consider all that as the speaker. Where you're at. You're at home. Are you comfortable? Are you enjoying yourself? So I have to go through all this, and then all my words fly out to the internet for each one of you to take in, right? So there's all these different aspects to consider, and one of the most important things to think about, what could go wrong, right? Is this the first time you've ever packaged a message? This is really important for kids because I see 5-year-olds infuriating their mother in the grocery store, and I'm sitting there thinking, this might be the first time that kid's ever expressed that emotion in words, and he's getting in trouble for it. And I fell into the same problem. And let me throw this out there too for any parents that are listening. When I talk to parents, I see this kind of guarded, like, I'm not a bad parent. That's not what this is about. I was not a very good parent for a long time. And then I went back to school, learned all this stuff, and was like, oh my gosh, my life would have been so much easier if I had known A, B, and C. This is not me judging people or telling you you're doing something wrong. It's just letting you know how to make your life a little easier by realizing a lot of the communication problems you have are neither person's fault. It's because we rely too much on language. And especially if you're dealing with somebody with ADHD or autism, language is a lot more difficult. And we'll get into that as we move forward. So again, what can go wrong? Is this the first time they've ever done it? Are they in a rush? Are they is everything in a good order, right? Like, think about when you make a package, right? If you're putting together a gift basket and there's 10 different things and you put the coolest thing on top, you messed up. Because they're gonna be, oh, look at this. And then the rest of that basket might end up in the garbage. Like, I guess you didn't like the cheese because you took the wine first, right? If you got to think about what order you want to make sure that the point is there. But if you front load it too much or you back end it too much, you're going to lose information along the way. Also, did you pick the right box, right? Going back to our analogy about shipping. Think about the concept of emotional vocabulary. It's a really well documented, well-researched area, but a lot of people don't think about it. If I feel sad because I lost a video game, that's a very different kind of sad than when my puppy passed away. So when I tell you I feel sad, it's not that I feel as sad as I did when the puppy died. I just still feel sad, but I don't have the vocabulary to say, I'm kind of bummed, right? Okay, bummed's a good term. I'm a little blue, right? So as we get older, we start getting more vocabulary to explain our current emotions. I could say, I just feel icky today. But to a child or somebody that might be lower functioning, sad's the word. And it covers everything. So kind of keep that in mind too when other people are talking to you. What if they have low emotional vocabulary? What if they say, I'm mad at you, not because they're angry at you or because they have some kind of emotional problem with you? It's because I don't have a better word for mad. Just I'm upset. I don't know what to tell you. I'm mad. That's the only word I have available. All right. And then you got to think about the concept of the current mental state of the receiver. Again, my job is to be a good presenter. I can't judge y'all's mental states. I know there's pictures on the right. Again, because of my eyes, I can't see facial recognition or facial expressions, which is great for public speaking because I just assume everybody's enjoying themselves. And so I don't have to worry necessarily about people judging me or looking upset because I just can't tell. But if the receiver is in a bad mood, there's a really good chance they're going to read your message as if it was aggressive. The best example I give a lot that people seem to really cling to is the concept of a text message, okay? So think for me, just create a scenario in your head where you go on a date and it's a really nice person. They're intelligent, they listen to you, they were respectful. It's everything you kind of wanted, and it was a wonderful time. And so you're on your way to work the next day, you get to your office, you're all settled in, you're like, all right, time to start my day. And you get a text message from said person. You go to read it and it says, what are you doing? Somebody's not muted.
To their recording, which is probably
Okay, sir, could you mute your mic? Thank you so much. So basically, they get that text message. First reaction is, "Wow, they're thinking about me." That's very validating. That feels really good. I feel good that somebody took their time to see how I was doing. Right? That's just a cute little back and forth. Now rewind to the night before. Not that great of a date. Kind of just, they were on their phone. They were kind of rude, kind of short with you. Maybe different political beliefs, whatever it is. Either way, you get to work, same text message, and your instinct is, well, it's none of your business what I'm doing. And what's funny is on the receiver end, whoever sent that message, they only have one intention. That's it. Human beings, they might have a hidden intention. Yes, that can happen, but there is still only one intention. So you translated that intention totally based off your current mental state. I'm happy here, so I like it. I'm not happy here, so I don't. Whatever the person meant is completely irrelevant because you're the receiver. You get to translate it. That is why Facebook is awful. That is why we all hate each other right now. And it's one of the things I'm a real big advocate about is that we need to stop using texting, because if you just got into a 15-minute argument with your uncle about some political campaign, and then someone turns around and go, well, I kind of agree. You're immediately like, you know what? Now you're getting the brunt force of all this argument I just had. And that's what's causing a lot of these furious things is just language. We got to be careful with that. All right, so moving on to this next one. Did you pick the right shipping method? Another again, is it in person, written, text? That's huge. I don't think I need to explain that too much. Some things are better for a phone call. Some things you have to do face to face. It's really important to consider how you're sending this message. And does the person know the package is coming? That was something that I actually had a mother suggest to me that I added later to this presentation, because it makes sense. If I send a cake to my grandmother in Germany and she's not home, cake's ruined. So if you're working on a car and I decide this is the best time to talk about our relationship, they might not be present enough to really, they're like, I'm fixing a radiator. Like, I don't think, like, I can't switch my mind back to social. Like, and then there's an argument. And it's all because of just timing, right? Timing is huge. So cognitive states, of course, are important. And, don't send your packages to empty houses. It's not good. This is a good state. Actually, I already gave it away, but I love doing this as a quiz. What is 20%? 20% of a message is words. The reason people prefer what we're doing versus a teleconference is you get to see me. I'm using hand gestures. I'm emphasizing. You can see my facial expressions. If I get excited, then you think, oh, well, this must be important. If I kind of get down, you're like, oh, that must be a bad thing. So you're watching every movement. 80% of what you're hearing right now, you're making up. That's why, if you guys notice, part of learning public speaking, I've had to learn how to talk in small chunks. I also have ADHD, so I have a bad habit of just like, you want to hear everything? Let's go. And I'll just ramble on, and everybody's like, no idea what you were talking about. So when I do presentations, I always try to make sure I give the brain time to catch up, because I know only 20% of the message I'm doing right now is coming from my actual words. All the rest of it is the visuals and the conversations and the questions we'll have later. That'll fill in the rest. But think about this, going back to that text message, right? When I got the text message that said, what are you doing? What are you doing is 20%, 80% I made up. The other 80% is me picturing that at home, like bugging me, or loving and being happy. That's totally my decision. And that's why texting and driving is bad, because 80% of your brain just took a trip to try to imagine what they're doing when you should have stopped the car at the red light. So think about that. And like they say, texting is worse than drinking and driving. That's absolutely true. So this is why you're only looking at 20% of a message. You have to generate the rest. So now, as you saw, we went through all this complexity, all this different data, all this information, just for who's sending the message. Now we're up to a whole nother mess. Somebody's getting it. So what's crazy is the human brain decodes messages before they imply meaning. So you have to open the package, right? I can't tell you if I love the present if I haven't seen it. So this is the biggest problem. And you got to think about this. What if Amazon or FedEx or any number of companies had a new rule? Hey guys, we got this new rule in place. We decided that if you send a package to somebody, they have to open it in the exact same order in which you packaged it, or it's ruined. It's like, There's no possible way anybody would sign up for that service, but that's what talking is. If I tell you, hey, I really like your hair today, and you don't like your hair, you get to decide that that was an insult. And so you've unpackaged it in a different order in which I sent it. And now we have an argument, and now there's a problem. So decoding is huge because I have no control of how you guys are decoding my message right now. I have none. All I can do is try to establish rapport, try to sound intelligent, try to give enough information or some good examples so that I can keep you engaged. But I really have zero control. As soon as the words are out, you guys can do with it what you will. After that, we have the receiver. So decoding becomes before the receiver because, of course, you have to open the package before you can technically receive it, because until that point, you have a box. Once you open it, you have the gifts. So now it's the receiver's job. And what is the receiver doing? Once the message has been unpacked, now they got to finally figure out what they think about it. And what's really interesting about the human brain and really damaging, messages like to go through our memory first. So I've seen this. Here's a really good example I saw. I was observing a child in a classroom, and anybody who's ever done behavioral observation will tell you, the kid that you're usually watching usually knows you're there. They know you're there for them. And I was watching this kid, and I was watching his teacher. His teacher got up on the board and was writing the agenda for the day. And I heard him say, "Excuse me, miss, what are we doing today?" And she turned around. She's like, "Would you please just sit down? Let me do my job. Just stop, Steven," or whatever his name was. "Just stop it." And went back to writing and kind of, So I'm like, okay, that was interesting. Let's investigate this. So after the class, I pulled her aside. I said, I noticed that you got a little upset when Steven spoke up. She said, "Well, you heard him. What are we doing today?" And I was like, I'm not trying to argue with you. But he didn't say it like that. And she's like, "What? Of course he did. He always talks like that." I'm like, well, and I gave her this spiel. I said, when you heard his voice, your brain registered the sound as him. So it pulled up memories of him, and you couldn't see him. So you had to make up, 80% of the language. She made up a tone of voice based off her experience because memory comes first. That's why it's so huge to ask for clarification. Like, whoa, hey, it sounded like you were yelling at me. Like, I wasn't yelling at you. Cool. Now we don't have an argument. Glad I asked. And that's a perfect example because she heard a snotty-nosed kid when he really was just genuinely asking her because he was taking notes. He was actually doing what he was supposed to. Just happened to be bad timing, right? And that happens to us all the time because you got to remember the receiver has their memories, their knowledge of language, their own emotional vocabulary, their experiences with different types of people. Maybe they don't get along with men that have beards. Maybe, it's like the game Guess Who, right? They don't like people with glasses for whatever reason. They were scorned by someone who wore glasses. And so now that you have glasses, it changes the way that in which they hear your voice. You might sound more nasally or whatever that their brain decides to make up for the way you sound. And it's just right here. This is one of the biggest things right here is what the receiver gets. And then, of course, you have feedback. Now, if anybody can tell by the picture, that's not the kind of package I would want to get. But what do we have on Amazon that avoids this is reviews. If you go and look at a review and they said, "Dude, this is what my package looked like when it came," you might reconsider using that vendor. You're like, well, that doesn't look like fun. Now, what if this vendor really had a good heart and they did a good job, but they don't know how to package stuff? But no one ever said anything. Everybody's getting packages like this and they're like, I don't get it. Every single client we get is a one-time client. They order one thing and we never hear from them again. That's so weird. Maybe our product's messed up. So they spend millions of dollars renovating their project. They send stuff out again, still nothing. Because no one ever gave them the benefit of feedback. So if you're not telling someone that annoys the ever-living whatever out of you, just you can't stand them, if you've never given them feedback, there's a really good chance they don't know they're obnoxious. And this is, of course, why ADHD is really, or autism, those are difficult because the feedback part takes more time. It takes a little bit more training for them to realize, yeah, I do sound rude when I talk like that. But if they're getting yelled at for being rude, really what's happening is it's just reinforcing their rudeness because you're being rude to them. I mean, it's just, that's where the whole give them a good talking to doesn't really work, because if we're just yelling at people, about not being rude, it's silly. It'd be like me dancing and giving a class about how dancing is bad. You guys would be like, well, why are you dancing? Like, this is, I came here to learn why dancing's bad, and you're just dancing the whole time. That's really confusing. A lot of times as parents, we do that. Um, it's like when you spank a kid for hitting their brother. Like, I know that sounds like the thing you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to spank him. That's what we do. But in reality, if aliens were watching you from another planet and they're like, hey, look at these two humans, the big one just hit the little one. Well, why did he hit him? Well, because the little one hit the littler one. Well, why would he hit him? I don't know. It's just that's what they do. And we're showing them, you can't do this behavior, only I can do this behavior. And we got to realize that sometimes the listening part, right? That's where I'm going back to. The reason I say a kid needs a good listening to is because we don't listen to them. They're second-class citizens. What they have to say is completely irrelevant because they haven't gone around the sun 18 times. Think about how weird that is. How we see the number 18 as being divine. We made that up. I mean, the human brain doesn't really finish developing to what, mid-late 30s? But for some reason, hey, I didn't respect you yesterday, but today you're 18. Now you're on par with me. Welcome to being an adult. It's a really silly tradition that we have that we got to start rethinking, because I know a lot of 12-year-olds that are way more advanced emotionally than a lot of 35-year-olds. But because they've got 6 more years of being a child, nobody ever listens to them. And I think that's a crime a lot of the time. So let's go back into this. Again, on the receiver's end, what can go wrong? We covered a lot of this. Did you give him unpacking instructions? I mean, if you really want somebody to open a package in the exact same order and you give them no guidance, good luck. Yeah. And it's just something that happens. When we lecture people, you talk to them for 45 minutes and you want them to understand a simple concept. You shouldn't have talked to them for 45 minutes because it's not simple anymore. And so now, if not, how are they supposed to know how to open it? And this is where misunderstanding comes from, especially if you use emotionally charged words, cussing or insults. Sometimes we'll say on accident, you're just so stupid to a kid. That's all they hear now. Everything else goes out the moment because you just put a label on them that they're not intelligent anymore. And that hurts. And nobody wants to really necessarily hear that from their caretaker. And we do it all the time. I've done it. It's just a bad habit you got to break. And you're like, ooh. And another thing that really helps is if that does happen, apologize. If you want your child to be respectful, you got to teach them. You got to show them these things. Did they look at all the contents? This is another good thing. This is kind of going along with the cussing, right? If I say if I give you guys an entire sentence and I just throw the F word in the middle of it, all of you can be like, oh my gosh, she said the F word. The rest of that sentence will disappear a lot of the times, unless it's kind of mixed into my language. Like stand-up comedians are really good at timing that because they know that the human brain sparks up. Ooh, a cuss word? I've never heard anybody cuss before. So a lot of public speakers or comedians, TV shows, they like to throw those in because it gets the brain attention. But unfortunately, sometimes it pulls the attention away from the message. So it's something you have to kind of do in stride and be careful with. And like I said, the brain will hyper focus on those things. And so you may just lose the listener altogether. Again, were they in a good mood? That's huge. If you're in a bad mood, it's not the best time to learn about why you're bad at doing things. It's just not going to help you get out of that mood. And were they ready for the package? Again, were they home? Are they emotionally available? All the same issues you can run into on the sender side. So this just gives you kind of an idea to go with that. I really like this quote because this is what most people tell me when I talk to them about this subject. I said what I said. It's not my fault that you heard it wrong. And logically, 100% logically, you're right. It's not your fault. This is not your fault. There's nothing you can do about it. But you have to come to the conclusion. You have two choices at this point. What's more important, being right or keeping the relationship? And most of the time you'll realize that little victory of I said what I said, it's not my fault, you got upset, that can kind of lead you down some problematic areas. And I realized that I didn't stop. So at this point, before I go to the next slide, I will stop. Are there any questions? Okay. Okay.
I don't have any in the chat box right now.
Perfect. We'll
I
keep going.
I had a thought,
Sure.
and just maybe sharing a little bit personally. One of the things that my ADHD child has said over and over again is that no one listens to me. And as parents, we feel like we listen incessantly to the never ending chatter, never ever ending. And we do feel like we're listening, but that has been a common theme since she was small all the way present that she says. So we don't know how to change that.
Well, maybe, again, how old is she?
16.
Okay. Maybe no one ever listens to me is really, I don't know how to explain myself.
Sure.
Because the chatter is just her establishing relationships. If she doesn't have the emotional vocabulary or she just doesn't really know how to explain herself, then it feels like nobody's listening, right? I tell you, hey, I'm upset, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. You're like, well, that's not what I meant. And I don't know. It's this weird concept. I can't quite put it into words. She can't say that. So what does she say? You're not listening, because as the parent, it kind of gets off put on you, like you're supposed to be better at this. Really, it might be her shortcoming that she's just not able to put it into words what she's experiencing.
Sure, sure. And I think also listening empathetically, um, maybe not listening to provide a solution or a lecture to
Yes.
what they're saying, just actually hearing. I mean, I've really had to focus and work at that. It's an ongoing work for me as a parent, for sure. Um, and I have a chat that says that their son says the same thing to them. Nobody ever listens to me, um, and so I mean, if I had a quarter for every time that's ever been said, I'd be a very rich woman, and it hurts me. I hate that she feels that way, but I've never really figured out to turn the corner to make her feel differently.
So
So.
you've never been able to capture what it is about your relationship that she sees that lacks.
Or that she thinks that no one, it's not just, or that no one listens to her.
So
So
so it sounds like she feels like the whole world is kind of closed ears to her.
I guess that's how
Yeah.
she sees it,
Or
for
is
sure.
it, yeah. So that what I just did to you as an example. So I'm reflecting. I'm taking what you said and trying to say it backwards. And obviously I got it wrong. I wouldn't have known that if I would said, yeah, that makes sense. That's not listening. Capturing the words isn't listening. Try to say what she said. So she says, I just can't understand this stupid project and it's dumb. Just say, honey, I'm so sorry about that. No, say, are you saying that it's hard to read it? Or are you saying it's just hard to get to the answer? And that way, when somebody hears you trying to understand what they're saying, that's true listening. But what you're trying to do is really a good parental method of just being there. And of course, you want to offer solutions, but we were talking about Jay Shree earlier. Who gave me one of the best quotes. I will always remember this forever. Is that she said she always wanted to make sure she gave her kids the dignity of failure, because if we don't allow our children to make mistakes, then they won't learn the skills. They won't become as rigid and resilient as we are, right? But what we might not have had as kids, like me, I figured out how to go through a lot of hard times on my own. But I had a wonderful mother who didn't tell me to not do it. She didn't say, don't go out with your stupid friends. She's like, I don't trust these guys and you're going to get hurt. I went out and I got hurt, and she taught me how to recover from it. She didn't judge me for making the decision because she's like, I get it. You're young and that was not a good choice, but this is how you overcome the pain. So if your child's standing in front of a door that you know on the other side of that door is some pain and suffering, it's not going to kill them, but it's going to be hard. You say, honey, I wouldn't walk through this door because in the past I walked through that door and it hurt me. But if you need to walk through that door, when you come back out of it, I'm right here to tell you what to do next. That's true listening. That's where it's like, you do what you're going to do. Not, of course, you don't want to let your kids go out and do drugs and rob banks or anything, but over everyday kind of stuff, it's just like, this might lead to some suffering. If you feel pain from this, let's talk about how I overcame it. and then maybe come up with an idea of how you do it, because the way I overcame it might not be the same way that works for you. And that way, they, like I said, that reflecting is huge. If somebody says to you, this is a good example. In my training with kids, they always said, don't react to a kid telling you a story until you've talked to them more. And it happened to me. I was working with a little kid, and I was sitting there, and he was probably 7, and he was like, yeah, my grandma died this summer. And my first instinct was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, that's horrible. But I was like, no, remember my training. I said, were you close? And he's like, not really. I don't know her. I'm like, cool. We moved on. But see, if I had said, I'm so sorry, that must be so hard for you, he'll immediately feel guilt because he's like, I didn't really know her. I guess maybe I should be sad. Like, she is my grandma. And then all of a sudden he goes down this road of like guilt because I was trying to do the right thing. I was trying to be the empathetic adult that's helping him through a problem, when it turns out it wasn't a problem. Not that he should be apathetic about the death of his grandparent, but she lived in another country and he met her once. So he was just telling me a story. He wasn't lost in the throes of loss, right? He wasn't as upset as I anticipated. So I made the good call of saying, were you close? And that's honestly one of the best ways to respond to someone telling you somebody died, because they might not be upset about it, which sounds awful, but maybe they didn't like the person. Like, that can happen. You can lose an aunt that you genuinely didn't get along with, and then everybody around you is just flooding you with, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Here's some flowers. And you're just sitting there like, man, I kind of feel like a jerk that I'm getting all this attention. I didn't even know her. I didn't even like her. And we put our emotions onto other people sometimes because we care. And that's what's really tough about parenting, is you care so much, you don't pay attention to what you're doing. And that's the mistakes I made. Is I was like, I'm going to turn you guys, you're never going to go through the crap I went through. Nope, we're not doing that. Nope, we're not doing that. Oh, no, there's pain over there. And then it was just to the point where my son at one point is like, what can I do? And I was just like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm pretty pleased with how my life has turned out overall. I've had a lot of terrible things happen. I was just talking to a friend of mine right now. I know a lot of people are going through depression, and I just straight up said, sometimes we have to be forged in the fires of our mistakes. But failure isn't bad. And that's why these communication issues, when you're communicating with another person and they fail to understand you, you just need to reiterate. You just need to help them understand, not get upset with them because they failed. Because failure is one of the most important aspects of human learning. If anybody here has a child who stood up and just walked the first time they ever did it at 1 year old, please post it in the comments, because I'd love to be famous, and we'll bring it to the media and tell everybody what an amazing child you have. But last time I checked, they fall, I think there's an average, I don't even remember the statistics, but it's like 1,300 times they fall before they actually get up on their feet. And none of us yell at them for it. Like, what are you doing, man? Look how easy this is. I can jump. You can't even jump yet. But as soon as they start to talk, think about it. As soon as they start to talk, our brains go, oh, they're an adult. I see it all the time. I'll be in the grocery store seeing somebody having a complete, like, philosophical argument with a 4-year-old. And I'm like, you don't need to be talking right now. Like this, you're not resolving this issue. They're just mimicking. They're just like, look, man, I don't know what to tell you. I just know the word cookie usually results in a little delicious cracker thing full of sugar. So I'm going to keep saying the word cookie because normally that makes cookies. I don't know why you're upset right now, but I don't even understand language yet. And if you guys ever get a chance to talk to like a speech language pathologist, they'll tell you kids don't understand as much as they say. Just like a parrot. If you walk into someone's house and their parrot insults you, you can't take it personally. It doesn't know what it's saying. And a lot of the times kids do not know what they're saying. Like when they say, I love you at an early age, they don't know what love is. They just know that when they say that word, you light up, you become warmer, you become affectionate. So yeah, they learn to really enjoy the word love, but doesn't mean they understand the complexities of love. Most adults don't, right? And what is it? Do I love a tree? Do I love my computer? Do I love my classmates? Do I love my dog? Do I love my wife? It's all the same word, and it's all completely context-based. And actually, I have a little thing that I prepared today. I wanted you guys to try. I want everybody at home, even though you got your mics off, just say something out loud for me and tell me what you hear. Okay? Rise, up, lights. Rise up lights, right? So if you go, let's say you go to a movie set and you're in charge of lighting and you're talking to an Australian engineer and you tell him, hey, I need some rise up lights above the stage. And he goes, razor blades? Why do you need razor blades? Like, no, I need rhizoblites. And he's like, yeah, I know rhizoblites. You're saying rhizoblites. Why would you put rhizoblites up on top of the ceiling? So again, it's all words. It's all just mixed, right? Anybody that ever says they can't do an accent, have them do that. It's hilarious because it literally sounds like someone from Australia saying razor blades. And I've actually talked to a few of my friends that are from Australia and they think it's great. It's rhizoblites, right? It's not what I'm saying. It's what you're hearing. It's just completely based off where you're from, what you see, what you understand, your context. And we live in one of the most international cities in the world. So yeah, some of these kids, they're not going to say things the same way. They're not going to hear things the same way. And we got to be careful with that. So again, yes, it is your response. I'm responsible for what I told you, not for what you understood. That totally makes sense. But if you want to live alone around, away from other people, this works. But if you want to have a family and you want to have good working relationships and you want to have good relationships with your children, you got to scrap this and remember this part. A single moment of misunderstanding is so poisonous that it makes us forget hundreds of lovable moments spent together within a minute. And I have met several people through my life who do not talk to their siblings because of one argument. 20, 30 years. Oh, I haven't talked to my sister forever. Really? What happened? We had an argument. Like, about what? Like, what could have possibly been so bad? And they have a version of the story. The sibling has a version of the story. And what's hilarious about human memory, if we had a time machine, we would go back and be like, huh, funny enough, you were both wrong. That's not at all what happened because you simulated it all in your head. And again, going back to the idea of the 20 to 80%, 20% words, 80% body. Think about the worst arguments you've ever had with a husband, a boss, a child, usually flares up as soon as someone tries to leave the room. And we don't really figure out why. You know why? As soon as they turn away from us, we lose 80% of our data. And whatever they say when they're looking in the other direction or when they're in the other room sounds awful. If I go to the other room and go, honey, we'll talk about it later. That's not going to sound good because she can't see me. She can't see that I'm like, look, honestly, I'm just upset. I had a bad day at work. I need to calm down. Instead, she hears, wow, what a jerk. Like, I can't believe he just yelled at me. And I'm like, I wasn't really yelling. I'm just trying to get my voice, whatever, and we can't see the people, AKA the internet or texting. When we can't see them, we have to make up stories in our head. And right now the world is just thrown into chaos. So we're throwing chaos into everybody else. So again, they mentioned that we want to leave with some tools. So we've talked a lot about problems and communication. I hope you guys got some ideas about just, it's really complex. So I've listed some listening skills. We'll go through those. These are kind of the takeaway tools you guys are welcome to ask me more about. So pay attention. I mean, that's pretty big. For instance, I'm sorry, who was it that brought up about their daughter? That's a really good example, is that she's doing number one. She knows that her daughter is upset that she's not being heard, and she's trying to investigate why. That means step one is done. Paying attention. She's figured it out, and she's trying to unravel the mystery of her child, why her child's upset, so they can have a better relationship. That's huge. A lot of parents just say, it's not my problem. You're upset, that's your problem, not dealing with it. It's because they don't want to pay attention. And honestly, I hear so many questions from parents saying, how do I get my kids off the phone? I'll tell you right now, and I'm not trying to judge, get off the phone first. Like, I see people, everybody's on their phones. But as soon as a kid does it, they're being disrespectful. I've been at a dinner table where there's 6 adults on a phone. And as soon as the 14-year-old pulls out their phone, 4 of the adults stop and say, what are you doing? We're at dinner. And I'm just like, again, I guess you got to get around the sun 18 times before you earn the phone rights. But it's something to consider about the double standards there. Withhold judgment. Okay, this is the hardest skill I've ever learned. But I am so grateful for it because it is almost impossible to do therapy if you're reactionary. If somebody, I had a 12-year-old girl, she was trying to shock me. I was doing some therapy and she pulled up her sleeves and she had cuts on her arm, pretty severe ones, but they weren't lateral. So she wasn't trying to commit suicide. She was cutting herself. And she looked right at me because I guarantee every adult she's shown that to has been like, oh, I can't believe you would do that, blah, blah, that's not. And so I said, oh, so you cut yourself? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, you know why you cut yourself? She's like, no. And I was like, well, sometimes when we feel pain all around of our bodies, we don't know what to do with it. So whenever we cause harm to ourselves, all the pain becomes centralized and we have more control over it. And she was like, that makes a lot of sense. And within working with her for like 4 months, she stopped cutting. She just never knew why she did it. She thought it was for attention, but her brain had a reason. But I withheld judgment. I didn't immediately think, oh, here's some emo kid trying to get attention who watched some movie and is thinking this is the way to get people. Instead, I asked her, why do you do it? Do you know why? You curious why? Because I know. And so when I told her, she was like, oh, well, I don't really feel like so much of an outcast anymore. And maybe I don't need to do this anymore. And maybe I just need to establish more control in my life. But it's because I said, I'm not going to judge this girl for what she's done. We're going to talk about what she can do. So, and then step 3, of course, reflect. Reflecting is huge. So again, your daughter says no one hears you. You should say, well, what is it you're saying that's not being heard? Instead of, honey, we're trying, or honey, maybe we are listening, or we are doing, just say, what is it that's not being heard? And pull out a notepad and let her talk and write it down and say, so you're saying that we don't listen to you because you're not getting your own way? No, that's not what okay, scratch it out. And let them see you, scratch it out. I misunderstood, my fault. Go ahead, write it down. Is this what you meant? No. All right, let's start again. Is this what you meant? Yes. Okay, boom, you've been heard. Here's your proof. And that's what reflecting is that I'm going to keep reshaping what I think your words are and what I think you're trying to say until we can come to a consensus. Because again, you have a different vocabulary than I do. So when I might use, I might say that, this person's overly loquacious. And someone's like, what? I'm like, oh, they talk a lot. Oh, cool. Like it's the same exact meaning. It's just based off vocabulary, educational level, where you went to school, who you know. So reflecting is a big one. Clarifying. That actually goes with reflecting. You want to reflect until you clarify. Wait until the child goes, that's what I meant. Because then what happens with that? Now they can go back and now they have a whole brand new list of vocabulary they can rely on when they're explaining complex emotions. And then, of course, summarizing. I don't think I have to explain that one. So you clarify, okay, did you say this, and this? Cool, these are right. We clarified that. We reflected, we clarified, now let's summarize. So you're saying this. This is what I'm hearing. You're saying all of this. Is this correct? And they go, well, not that part. Okay, cool. This is what you're saying? Yep, okay. We're summarized. I understand. I heard you. And the problem is I can't see my last one because all the cameras are in the way. I can't remember what it was. No. Okay, fair enough. Let me just move this out of the way. There we go. Aha. And there we go. So our last step, share. See, what's great about this process with a teenager is as soon as you're done doing this list, they do it for you. Okay, I want you to know that I get sometimes frustrated too. Like, really? Like, sometimes it's kind of weird. Sometimes you 16-year-olds don't feel like you're listening to me. And again, you want to be accusational. You don't want to be confrontational. Just say, it's really interesting because the thing you're upset about not being heard for, I feel that way too. Let's try it with me. Okay, I'm saying this. And then your daughter's like, okay. And you're like, ask me what I just said. Say it to me again. But again, you want to teach them these skills, so you want to go through it really slowly. This should be how discourse happens, these steps. Because at the end of it, you've got a receiver that knows what they're getting and a sender that knows what they sent, and you've agreed to it. You open the packages together, right? You're like, hey, take out this part, then this part, then this part, and then this part. You see what I mean? Oh, I totally didn't get this. You sent me this weird package. I just thought it was random pieces. Like, no, it's a robot you can put together. I just forgot to tell you about it. Like, oh, this makes so much more sense. Now it's a cool robot instead of what I thought was garbage. All right. So again, that's from an old one. That's just, so anyway, that's most of my slides. But the biggest thing I want to put home for you guys is thinking about all of the stuff I just said. I threw a lot of words at you. I threw a lot of data at you. I threw a lot of if-thens and what-ifs. But the biggest thing to take away from it is to use less words. even though I just used a lot. Just ignore me, right? I'm the guy dancing that's telling you not to dance. But think about this. If there's a chance for misunderstanding, and I give you a 3-letter sentence versus a 15-letter sentence, which one of those sentences is more likely to be misunderstood? The longer one. And we do that. The more we talk to somebody that we're trying to get a point across to, that's just more stuff for them to misunderstand. So the way I do it, when I've worked with nonverbal kids. I walked into a classroom one time as a 6-year-old nonverbal autistic child who had been screaming for 3 hours. And his teacher called me from my other campus and said, I know you're at the other campus. Can you please come help me? He's brand new. I don't know what to do. I was like, let's do it. So I went and sat next to him. And as I walked in the room, I saw 4 adults hunched over him, asking him what is wrong. And I'm like, he's 4. There's no, think about the concept of what is wrong. That's not even a real sentence. Are you asking me what is the word wrong? Or what is wrong here? Or what's wrong with the world? Or what's wrong with my toe? Or what do and especially if I'm nonverbal, I really don't understand you. So what I did was I sat next to him and I stared at the wall because he was staring at the wall screaming. And I wanted to see what he was looking at. So we looked at the wall. And I'm watching out of the corner of my eyes. He's sitting there looking at me. And if I start turning my head, he screams more and he keeps looking at the wall. So I waited. And of course, like any kid, as soon as he ran out of breath, he went, that desperate attempt to try to get your breath back so you can scream again. And I turned to him and I said, hey, what's up, man? And I started playing with a ball and I started throwing it in the air. And then he started screaming again and I stopped. I went robotic. I didn't get mad. I didn't lecture him. And slowly, over about 15 minutes, he started to realize that I'm a toy, like most adults are toys in a way, that would only turn on when he wasn't screaming. So over the course of 15 minutes, his scream got less and less and less. And he would start testing me where he would go, and I'd turn and he'd scream and I'd look back. And then he'd get quiet, I'd look, and then he'd scream and I'd look back. And that's communication. People looked at me afterwards. He totally stopped. All the teachers like, you didn't do anything. I'm like, exactly. I wasn't trying to solve a child. I wasn't trying to fix a problem. I was communicating with another person. And I was using 80% of my language skills, but just none of my words. Because why do I need them? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's better to just put them on a shelf. If your child, you got a 16-year-old daughter that's having a rough day, sit next to her and do not talk. I guarantee you'll learn more about that child in an hour than you ever have your rest of your life. Because when you're putting an input, they have to process all that stuff that just happened. Their brain now has to divert to processing when it could have just used all of its resources for getting over the problem. And we do that so much. We're like, we need you to calm down and listen to me. You're not listening, calm down. Why aren't you calming down? And they're like, dude, I'm trying to calm down, but I'm so busy decoding all these messages you're throwing at me. Just stop. Just leave me alone. Just sit with me. Just be with me. Just share space and this happened. Okay, here's an anecdotal story. My son's 15, and I know he's been going through depression because he lost all of his friends. He was working on getting a girlfriend going, and then all this happened. He was part of our OTC. It all fell apart. Everything's gone, right? And I noticed he was down, and I brought it up to him. I'm like, hey, I noticed you're a little down lately. He's like, honestly, I don't really know how to talk about it yet. I was like, well, as soon as you do, let me know. I go home for lunch. That just happened to be the time. And I was like, ooh, I know how to solve. And then my little brain was like, Jeremy, listen to your own research. Be quiet. Because if you say anything to him, you're going to steer where he's going. And he's finally opening. So I just went, mm-hmm. And this is a good method for parents. Do this because you covers your mouth and you can't talk. You're like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it's so hard not to be like, oh, I know why that's happening. Oh, I know why you're sad. Oh, I know what to do. Oh, come watch this movie. It's great. No, just let them figure it out because they have to learn how to construct really abstract concepts into words. And it's not an easy process, especially if they're being bombarded by words. So that's the end of my little spiel there, but it's magic. It's just absolute magic to just give them a good listening to. Just sit and listen.
This topic is just so good, and I can only imagine that the folks that have joined tonight that this is good for them. As you well know, and you know, provided some stories to this as well. Um, a lot of our kids are very, very emotionally charged. They go from 0 to 100 very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think sometimes as parents, we're trying to avert disaster. Um, so it's not, I don't, you know, maybe it's not necessarily trying to talk too much, but we see where it's going because it's already at 100 and it's
Trying to get
escalating.
ahead of it.
Yeah. So can you give us some pointers and tips on that? Because I think that that's a real issue for a lot of us, and especially for the parents that have kids on the spectrum as well.
So I'm not. So I got the awesome opportunity of teaching a social skills class over the summer, and I did it for 3 years in a row. The only problem is it's an 8-day social skills class. You can imagine it takes 4 days for them to adjust because they're all autistic kids, and or you know, and it was rough. And I was the only male, and it was admitted to me that I got the litigation kids, the kids that weren't necessarily supposed to even be in the program, but because their parents sued, they got to be. So I got to deal with some behaviors well beyond what I'd ever been equipped for. One in particular has always stuck out to me. This girl was 8. She was visually looking at her completely neurotypical. She walked in, she was slightly robotic, so I could tell that the AU was there, but she had already learned how to be cute, right? She would do this and she'd be like, "Hi everybody." But it was obviously a show. She had learned how to kind of play the role as a cute kid. So she walks into the room and I'm like, "Wow, what a nice little girl. She's so sweet." And she took her seat, she did everything she asked. Some of the other kids struggled coming into the room. And I just remember thinking, that one right there, she's going to be my classroom helper, right? But I noticed she had a rubber necklace. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with rubber necklaces, but they're an offshoot for biting. It's a good substitute so they don't self-harm. So I'm just looking at her like, and I had gotten her folder ahead of time, but it's public school, so they're not very good at conveying information. And I'm sitting there talking, and she's building blocks. We wanted everybody to transition softly, so we're building blocks, and she builds this big tower. And I walk up to her and I go, "That looks amazing. You did a great job." And she's like, "Thank you. I'm so," and just takes a chunk out of her. And I'm just like, "Whoa, okay." And I panicked because she's screaming. I mean, it wasn't bad. She just broke the surface, but it was like, no reason, no provocation. None of the kids were messing with her. No discernible reason why this has happened. So I jumped on the ground and I said, "Oh my gosh, you are so good at calming down." And she just goes, "Oh, I am." And I was like, "Didn't you see that? You were so upset and now you're calm." And what was funny is her homeroom teacher was 2 classrooms down and came sprinting over because she knew her scream and was like, "Is everything okay?" And when she got there, she's like, "She's already calmed?" I'm like, "Yeah." And it worked every single time. And just to give you an example, I've never seen somebody shift this quick. We go to the gym, and now thinking about it, it might have been caused by the sound reverberating in the gym. I don't really know. But we walked in there, and this girl was one of the best hula hoopers I've ever seen. She could do like 6 hula hoops at one and just sit still, and they rotate perfectly, which I'm not good at hula hoops, so I admired it. She's hula hooping, and I was like, "Wow, you're so good." And she's like, "I did good." And I was like, "You did great." And she said, "I did it." And she jumped in midair and said, "I did it. I can't." And screamed at the top of her lungs, "I can't." Hit the floor and started bashing her face in. So of course I slid right next to her and said the same thing. "Honey, you calmed down so good. How do you do that?" And she was like, I did what?" And she's nose is bleeding. And I'm like, "You're so calm right now." And she's like, "I am." And I was like, "Yeah, you did great." And she's like, "Oh, thanks." And my teacher I was working with was a sped teacher. And she's like, "I can't believe that works." And I was like, whatever side of the brain you feed is going to get bigger. Period. There's no debating it. If you work at a place and you're the guy that makes mistakes all the time and your boss comes and tells you you make mistakes all the time, there's a really good chance the reason you make some mistakes so much is because your boss keeps telling you you're making mistakes. We have evidence. I mean, the brain grows wherever it gets energy. And if you think your child's about to blow up, you better start talking about how well they've settled before it happens. Not don't blow up. because what part of that brain's getting fueled? When I struggled in my young adulthood, I had a horrible anger problem. It stemmed from my father. I never harmed anybody, but I did punch holes in walls and scream loudly like an idiot. But I remember how good it felt to be angry because it put me in control. I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy. So when I get angry, everybody in the room listens. And it feels good. I can see why people become addicted to anger. But I remember more than anything else, nothing ever made me more angry than when another person said, you need to calm down. Because, and I've done research on it because I had to conquer my own anger and figure out what it was. If you are angry and you're losing your mind, you know you've lost control. I don't care if you're 3 years old, you know you lost control. And then somebody else comes and go, hey, whatever little control you have left, I'm going to take it. Because you need to calm down and I'm the one who's dictating that. It's not going to work. You need to talk about what you want to see, not what you want to not see. There's an infinite list. In my office here, it's pretty friendly. If a kid comes in here, I'm not worried, right? But I can list, probably just sitting where I'm at, I could come up with 20,000 different things a child should not do. I don't want them to touch that paper or that paper. I don't want them to draw on this. I don't want them to play with my computer. I don't want them to touch my camera or my phone or this. But you know what I do want you to do? I'd love for you to just sit over there and play with these blocks. And they come over here. No, we're going to sit over here and play with these blocks. Oh, I grabbed your marker. No, we're going to sit and play with these blocks. Because there's only one thing I want you to do. But if I spend all my time listing off the plethora of things not to do, your brain is getting flooded with all these not to do's. It's just like a manager. What kind of manager would you want? Someone who points out when you do things correctly, or one who only brings up things when you've done it incorrectly? And just remember this with a child. They are not, and welcome to email me and fight with me about this. I would love to have the debate, but children do not misbehave. Children are learning how to behave. Adults misbehave. Executive functioning is how we control our brains and control our behaviors, and they do not have it. It's not there until they're 20. So if you're upset at a teenager for not making good planning decisions, that's the equivalent of being upset at somebody in a wheelchair because they will not stand up. That part of the brain is not there yet. We can see it. We can look at the brain and be like, it's mush. Executive functioning isn't there. Like, well, I have a daughter who sat attentively in kindergarten and was a great student all the way through. Like, okay, does that mean she's behaving? Or does that mean that there's a biologically significant reason that she sits good? Do you buy her things? Do you treat her better than the other kids? Does she get special privileges? Maybe that's why she's not behaving. She's just capitalizing. Hey, I noticed if I sit her all day, when I get home, mom gives me a cookie. Whereas this other kid is like, who cares if I sit? Honestly, the other day I got an A in class and I got home and my parents weren't home. And then the next day I got written up by the principal and I got home and my parents still weren't home. So who cares? There's no discernible difference between a good day and a bad day. Bad days are easier, man. It's so much easier to not behave, especially if there's nothing in it for me. And that's the thing with a kid, is that if you are having a kid that has massive meltdowns, it's so difficult. And there's nothing worse than being in public. It's the most embarrassing thing in the world when you're worried that your child's behavior is interfering with somebody else's peace, right? Like if you're out in the mall and they're losing it, you're like, I just got to go. And it's hard to not get frustrated. But as far as a behavioral management thing, which is probably a whole nother topic, think about being on an airplane. And I guarantee every mother in this chat here, because you've taken the time to take your time to listen to a complete stranger talk about children, you would think the same thing. If you're on a plane and the air pressure shifts and the masks drop, your first instinct is to get the mask on that kid. Am I wrong? Like, got to make sure my kid's okay. But that's literally the worst thing you can do. Because if you're fumbling and fighting with them to get the mask on and you pass out, you're both in trouble. So in a situation where your child is losing their mind, the very first thing you need to do is give yourself oxygen. Because if you lose it, then you're both gone.
That is so, so true. Thank you, Jeremy, for sharing that with us tonight. We're about out of time. If anybody has any additional questions or comments, if you could throw them in the chat box. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting to see if there's any additional chat, I see your contact information on the screen. Are there any services that your company provides that our families need to be aware of?
Well, I'm working on building more parenting kind of classes because I just I've I that was the thing I loved the most about working in the public schools was helping the parents, but unfortunately districts don't like you helping parents. I'm just gonna say it. They get on you for it because you're supposed to represent the district, not the people. And so I'd really like to, I mean, honestly, it's just all stuff that I wish I could go back in time and tell myself. My kids were between the ages of 8 and 10 before I learned any of this. And all my friends, I had kids young. I got a 16-year-old and I'm getting close to 40. And all my friends are having kids now and I've been helping them and they're like, wow, this makes so much more sense. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have had this, but that's why I want to spread it because when you start seeing your child's behavior as a game to solve, it just doesn't bother you as much. But on that same note, something parents all parents should know. There is this research study where they took 2-week-old mothers, so mothers that had had their children about 2 weeks old, and they recorded a series of crying. And they found that mothers weren't the best at discerning when it was their child crying because it's just a baby crying. But we did notice significant shifts in their blood pressure when it was their child. So it did prove that if it's your biological child, you do have a physiological response to their being upset. So when you get heated because your child's crying, totally natural. And I've noticed that when parents know that, they tend to calm quicker. And I've worked with some young mothers where I'm like, okay, and they're like, she's crying. I'm like, do you feel it? Do you feel that spike? They're like, yes. I'm like, that's your blood pressure. Try this breathing technique, which helps with blood pressure. And they're just sitting there like, and what happens is, which is great, I've seen 6-month-old babies look up at their mom who's sitting there breathing quietly and they stop crying because you're the protector. If you're freaking out, we're all freaking out. You're the only one here big enough to kill a lion. I'm not going to be able to do it. And you're upset. So we're in trouble. It all kind of goes back to just what does that brain think's happening? That
Right.
brain has no idea what Amazon is, has no idea what air conditioning and cars is. It's just a thing that's kept to keep it alive. For all that brain knows, you're sitting in a cave, and all the most stressful things in the world are bears that can come in at any point. There's a political bear, there's an in-laws bear, there's Bill's bear, there's a COVID bear now that's massive. So there's all these fears that the adults are dealing with, and the kids are like, when are these things going to come through the door and kill us? Because it's enough for you guys to fight about it. It must be bad. And they don't know it's an abstract concept or a war in another country or a plague that's bothering the United States. They don't know that. All they know is there's something in danger. And if you're scared, what chance do I have of survival? So if mom and dad during a fight, during a complete meltdown, if you guys just take the time to sit and breathe, those children, they're frantically looking around for a reason that they're upset. And if you guys are calm, they have no reason. Really good example of that is what happens when a child falls in front of you. They look right at you because they want to know, am I hurt? Because they don't know, like, what is pain, like, what does an injury look like? I fell, it didn't feel good, and they look, and mom's like, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, what happened? Did my leg fall off? And they just start crying because they're like, oh, there's something bad, I don't know what it is. But if you see some parents like, you're all right, get up, you're fine. They usually get over it because like, oh, okay, so I guess no damage. You can see, right? You can see my back. Is my neck okay? Cool, we're good. But if you show that high emotion, it immediately makes them think something bad has happened and I don't really understand what. And it carries all the way up until their 20s, man. It doesn't get much easier until that executive functioning kicks in.
Jeremy, we have one question
Sure.
before we close. It says ideas to improve speed of down kids when it comes to eating and dressing. Do you have word advice, listening advice? So I'm imagining we're trying to get a kid out the door in the morning. Do you have any advice for that? It's in our chat box.
Turn it into a video game. Make it a competition. Do it on a Saturday. Hey man, if you can get out in 15 minutes today, we're going to go to IHOP. If you make it out in 20 minutes, we'll just eat here. If it takes you more than 30 minutes, then we'll try next time. Not you failed, not that you can't do it, but let's get that time down. Where's your favorite restaurant? You get out in 15 minutes today. Let's do it. So everybody gets up on a Saturday morning and they do the routine. They brush their teeth like, let's go, let's go, let's go, when they don't have to actually be at school. So there's no chance of the actual fight, right? Saturday and Sunday, every morning, like, let's go. You get out the door, they have their backpack and you have them like, they did come out with the backpack. Did I make it? Like, you did it 16 minutes. That's close enough for me. Let's go get breakfast. And all of a sudden they're like, man, this whole morning routine thing's pretty awesome. But if it's like, you gotta get to school, we gotta go, I got to get to work, we gotta go, and they're just like, what? Like, I'm still half asleep, man. Like, it's not as fun. It needs to be fun. And another really important tip for parents, if you do not have the home rules posted on your wall, that means your child has to keep all the rules in their head. And if your child has ADHD, not going to happen. If they have autism, not going to happen. If they have ID or it's Down syndrome, it's just too much information to keep. They're already trying to work on social norms and hygiene and tying their shoes and learning math. And then you're like, oh, by the way, all the things I expect from you, just store that in your brain. And the thing is, you become the enemy at that point because you're not the guy who keeps the rules or the person who keeps the rules. You are the rules. So there's a lot more animosity, but this is a great way to set up rules. Hey guys, we decided we want to have some more rules to this game of life, right? So let's write them on the wall. Hey, Jimmy, little Jimmy, do you want me to yell at your mom? Like, oh no. Okay, yeah. Do you want me to yell at you? No. Okay. How about we put no yelling? Everybody's like, yeah, sounds good to me. Okay, no yelling. Hey, do you want me to hit you? Do you want me to like punch you? No. Oh, should we punch the dog? Oh no, we don't want to punch the puppy. You're right. No hitting. Let's do that. What about running? We should probably run outside. But if we run inside, what if we knocked over the TV? I can't get another TV. Anybody want me to run by and knock over the TV? No, that'd be dangerous. Okay, no running. So now you have this list of rules that everyone follows. And you guys could play it out. You can even pretend to have a little fit. It works a lot. When throwing a fit in front of a kid is hilarious because they're just like, adults don't do this. So mom, drop down on the floor and throw a fit, and then have dad be like, honey, we're not having fits in the house. Oh, you're right. And then you get up and go amongst your life. So the kids are sitting there like, oh, you can just stop throwing a fit? Huh. Okay. Well, I guess it's against the rules. Mommy broke the rules, and then daddy pointed it out, and mommy stopped doing it. Mommy didn't get spanked. Mommy didn't go to timeout. She just stopped because we have rules that you can't throw those fits. And you gotta be careful too when you're talking to the kid. Don't tell a kid they're throwing a fit, because what does that mean? If this is a fit and I'm throwing it, right? Like you got to think about, especially with autism, they think very logically. So if you're like, don't throw a fit, they're going to hear what's a fit and where is it something I can throw? Tell them, I don't like when you fall on the ground and wave your arms and scream. That's what I don't like. Don't use the word tantrum. The word tantrum means nothing. It's a completely made up word. And to a 4-year-old, it just sounds like it might as well be the name of the president, right? It might as well be a country and on the other side of the world that they've never seen. Tantrum does not mean anything. When I'm writing papers and I say, kid threw a tantrum, and then I hand it off, here's my professional document, they threw a tantrum, they're going to say, well, what does that mean? Was he throwing things? Was he kicking things? Was he screaming? I'm like, oh, you're right. He was running around the room tearing up paper. Thank you. That's what I need to know. That's the level of detail you need to share, especially with someone that has ID. You got to make sure that when you're describing behavior, hey, I really liked the way you went through the steps of the morning routine and you got yourself ready. I love that. But you got to make sure you're doing it at times that aren't as stressful as the first thing in the morning before school. Because honestly, first thing in the morning before school is the worst time in the world. I still have PTSD about trying to help my brother get ready in the morning. He was really ADHD. And it was hard because he was older than me. And I'm like, come on, get out of bed. Why don't you get out of bed? I did it. You do it, And we just fought all the time. And the truth was, he didn't have a routine. We didn't have something put into place that he could wake up and be predictable. As an adult, if I don't follow my morning routine, I feel cranky. So I try to do a thing where I get up, I do a mild workout, I make a smoothie, I take vitamins, I read Facebook for 15 minutes, and if I do it for 40 minutes, I'm late and I'm freaked out and I get to work and I'm in a bad mood. People need a routine, and especially if you're ID, because people with ID or Downs, it's harder for them to predict the future. So they're more anxious. Same thing with autism. They're so anxious because they don't know what's coming around the corner. But if you're like, honey, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., you know exactly what we're going to do today. And we're going to talk about it. Here's a good example. Watch Dora the Explorer. Dora the Explorer was actually designed with a lot of behavioral science behind it. Hey, what are we doing today? We're going to go see grandma. Great. We're going to go to the farm. We're going to go to the ice cream shop, and then we're going to go see grandma. Hey, we went to the farm. What are we doing now? We went to the farm. Now we're going to the ice cream shop. Then we're going to see grandma. Where are we going next? The ice cream shop. Hey, we're at the ice cream shop. We went to the farm. Then now we're at the ice cream shop. Then we're going to grandma's house. And it sounds really repetitive. You watch the show, it's a little obnoxious at times, but there's a reason that 4 and 5-year-olds love it, because it's so predictable. If me and you, we could watch a show like Friends and you're like, oh, I totally knew that was going to happen, because we understand more complex predictability. They don't. And it's so exciting for them to be like, oh, they're going to go to grandma's house. I know it. I know they're going to make it to grandma's house, because that's how this show runs. Oh, we made it. And then they get to grandma's house and all the kids get to celebrate. And you're just sitting there like, wow, this is really dumb. This is kind of boring. But the truth is it's designed for that brain. So what does he do? Hey, I need you to do 5 things. Brush your teeth, get dressed. You brushed your teeth. What are we doing next? Get dressed. Okay, you brushed your teeth, you got dressed. And what's great about repeating the steps that have already been accomplished is that his little mind, he's going to be like, this is great. I've made it through 5 out of 7 tasks. I can totally do it. Rather than, oh, I have 2 left. It's more like, dude, I've already done 5. I can't believe I pulled that off. So again, go watch Dora the Explorer. Build your morning routine like that and just drill it into him, and he will respond really quickly. And visuals. Visuals are big too, because pictures work so much better than words, which we've talked. Go, by the way, you saw all that processing that involved for audio information. Pictures don't do that. You show a picture, it goes right into processing. It's done. You can interpret pictures, of course, like abstract art and things like that, or like puzzles. But the average, here's a picture of a toothbrush. What does that mean? Does that mean brush your teeth? Sure does. That's it. They can't misinterpret a picture of a toothbrush. I mean, they could find ways, kids.
Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Your topic was very, very well received. And I think as parents, we're walking away and knowing that less is more, and that we need to listen more and listen without providing solutions per se. A lot of really great tips, and I think we're going to need to have you back on another topic as well. So I
think behavioral management's the one I get the most questions about, just how to deal with a fit. It's a huge one.
Please do send that over to me, and we'll get you back on the schedule for another topic. For the families that are here for the first time tonight, we are really glad that you came and participated again. We do have topics the last Tuesday of every month. And we're still, like I said, meeting by Zoom. If you were registered for this event, you participated in the event, we're going to send out the slides and the recording. And also, we will also send out a registration form if you haven't already joined ADDA SR. There's no requirement ever to join this organization, but it is a volunteer organization, and the ADDA SR Southern Region puts on a big conference for our families, and they have speakers, renowned speakers from all across the country that come in and really, really speak about great topics. So we'll put that out there to you. I think it's like $40 a year to join, and then you'll be notified on all these other conferences and everything to do with the mothership of ADDA. So anyway, thanks again, everyone, for being here. Jeremy, you just did a great job, and we really appreciate you, and I hope all of you guys will have a great night.
If I may, one more thing. ADAD is an amazing organization, and they have some of the most wonderful people I've ever met working for them. So I just want to throw that out there.
I love them, and one of the things that Pam Esser began this organization, and There are other ADHD organizations out there, and the requirement is you must join. You know, if you need information, if you need tools, or you need resources, you must join. And Pam didn't want families that may be struggling financially to not be able to get the resources that they need. So there is no requirement. You don't have to join. It's suggested. It's only $40 a year, and the organization could really use our support. So you can do whatever you want. There's no pressure here by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a really great organization, and you will be shocked at some of the speakers that they get in and some of the resources that they put out there. They're really, really good, and I think that they'll help you in your journey. They've definitely helped me in mine. So thanks so much, guys. Have a good night, and we will catch up soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.